That morning felt like a scene from my worst nightmare come to life. There they were, my life's possessions scattered across the front lawn like worthless debris after a storm. The front door. My front door. Looked foreign now, its new hardware gleaming mockingly in the morning sun. I tried my key again and again until my hands shook, but it was useless. Like trying to unlock a heart that had already closed itself off to me. After months of swallowing my pride and enduring countless small cruelties from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, this felt like the final betrayal. Something deep inside me, that last thread of hope I'd been clinging to, finally broke. The weight of all those sleepless nights, all those silent tears, suddenly lifted from my shoulders. Standing there on my own front lawn, I made a decision that tasted like freedom. I would never let these walls witness my pain again. My hands were steady now as I gathered what was left of my life and carefully placed each piece into my car. There was only one place left in this world where love didn't come with conditions, my parents' home. The peaceful months that followed gave me time to examine how I'd ended up here, like reading the last chapter of a book I never meant to write. I'm Stephanie, 35 years old, and this isn't the life I had planned for myself. My husband Kyle is 5 years younger, a gap that never seemed important until it was. For years, I was that woman who lived and breathed her career, finding purpose in every promotion and satisfaction in every success. Marriage was a distant concept, like a horizon you see but never reach. Kyle worked under me at the office, something that should have been a red flag, but love has a way of changing the rules we set for ourselves. Before him, my relationships were as brief as morning coffee breaks. I never let anyone get close enough to matter. But Kyle, he wore down my defenses with the patience of waves shaping a shoreline. His promises felt like anchors in a stormy sea. I could keep my career, he'd handle our home, and we'd build a life that honored both our dreams. His unwavering commitment made me think that maybe, just maybe, I could have it all. Children were like watercolor dreams back then, beautiful but undefined. Then 35 approached like an unwelcome deadline, and suddenly those dreams needed answers. I chose Kyle, thinking I was choosing security and understanding. Those first months were like living in a bubble of possibility. He kept every promise, supported every late meeting, and celebrated every success. Then my father-in-law's death shattered our carefully constructed world. The loss transformed my mother-in-law and Kyle's sister Savannah, leaving them like ships without anchors. Savannah, at 33, was chasing dreams that paid in passion rather than security, spending most of her freelance earnings on fan conventions and memorabilia. I watched her drift with growing concern, seeing stability slip further from her grasp. Then came Kyle's suggestion. The moment our story truly began to unravel. His voice was soft, but his words changed everything. His mother and Savannah needed us, needed our home. He painted a picture of shared responsibilities and continued freedom for my career. My hesitation felt like a betrayal, but instinct was screaming for caution. I voiced my concerns about household duties, such as negotiating terms with a lawyer. The suggestion that his mother should manage the home seemed reasonable. We were helping them, after all. Kyle's agreement came easily. Too easily, looking back. He asked for time to consider, but I needed guarantees, not just promises. When you're building a life on someone else's foundation, you need to know it's solid. Finally, Kyle assured me his family would handle everything. Words that would come back to haunt us both. I thought about asking for written agreements, but chose trust instead. My first mistake. We moved into their home, carrying hope along with our boxes. That first morning, I approached my mother-in-law like a peace offering. My words about living together sparkled with forced optimism. When I mentioned work and household arrangements, her response cut through my hopes like a winter wind. Her muttered words about Kyle's poor choice of wives, about real women managing both career and home, burrowed under my skin like thorns. I stood there frozen, watching her retreat, tasting betrayal. This wasn't the welcome I'd expected, it was the first act of a tragedy I hadn't signed up for. When I was unpacking our belongings, trying to carve out a space for myself in this hostile environment, Savannah appeared like a ghost in my doorway. Her words dripped with venom as she delivered her verdict on my worth as a sister-in-law. "So, my brother got stuck with the plain Jane career woman," she smirked, her words hanging in the air like poison before she vanished. The hits kept coming, first my mother-in-law, now Savannah, their rejection as sharp as physical blows. Living under the same roof only magnified their contempt, though I couldn't understand why they'd invited me into their home only to treat me like an unwanted intruder. Months later, the truth hit me like a slap in the face. They hadn't wanted me, they'd wanted my paycheck. The signs appeared quickly, like cracks spreading across thin ice. Their earlier sarcasm evolved into something worse. Complete invisibility. They'd only cook when Kyle was home, performing their roles like actresses in a play. The promised help with housework evaporated like morning dew. No cleaning, no laundry, nothing. When it came to my needs, it was as if I didn't exist at all. I tried reaching out, discussing our agreement, and addressing my mother-in-law with all the respect I could muster. But she just fixed me with those cold eyes, like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe, before walking away. Savannah took a different approach, less openly hostile but equally unhelpful. So there I was, coming home from long days at the office to face mountains of laundry and endless cleaning. Every evening became a testament to broken promises and shattered trust. I wanted to tell Kyle, to shake him awake to the reality of our situation. But every time I saw the worry in his eyes about his family, the words died in my throat. Then came the final indignity, like a bitter cherry on top of this poisoned sundae. When they needed money for their hobbies or shopping trips, they couldn't even face me like adults. Instead, they resorted to leaving notes under my dinner plate, like children passing secret messages. The cowardice of it all felt like one more twist of the knife. Just yesterday, I found another note from my mother-in-law, and something inside me finally reached its breaking point. "I need $300 this month. Can you help?" The note's cold formality felt like another slap in the face. I contemplated telling Kyle, but he was already drowning in his own financial quicksand. Social butterflies never come cheap. He couldn't resist a night out, and the bar tabs were piling up like autumn leaves. "We should tighten our belts this month," he'd say as if it were our problem rather than his spending habits. Back when he was my subordinate, I kept his expenses in check like a well-oiled machine. But his new job came with new friends, and suddenly every invitation was irresistible. Watching our savings bleed away one happy hour at a time. With a heaviness in my heart that felt like swallowing stones, I handed over the $300. I labeled it a loan in my mind, but my heart knew better. It was just another sacrifice on the altar of family peace. This dance continued for 2 long years, each step heavier than the last. Kyle had grown comfortable using my income as his safety net, and somehow I become the reluctant ATM for the entire family. It was my new normal, a bitter pill I swallowed daily with my morning coffee. But I had an ace up my sleeve, something that would later prove to be my salvation. Then came that day. The day everything changed. Coming home from work, my life lay scattered across the front lawn like confetti after a party nobody wanted. Confusion gave way to recognition as I approached my displaced life. "What in God's name is this?" The words escaped through gritted teeth as rage bubbled up like a volcano ready to explode. With fury coursing through my veins like liquid fire, I marched to the front door. But my key might as well have been a child's toy. They'd changed the locks while I was earning the money they so readily took. Unbelievable. The word tasted like ashes in my mouth as I surveyed my scattered belongings, finding a note among the wreckage of my marriage. The message was as cold as winter frost. Never come back. Your face isn't welcome here anymore. Be grateful we didn't trash your things. My mind spun like a carnival ride I couldn't get off. Their conspiracy was clear as day, and Kyle's silence screamed louder than any explanation could. Hands trembling with a mix of fury and determination, I loaded what I could into my car. The drive to my parents felt like escaping a sinking ship, and with each mile marker, the weight on my chest grew lighter. My career, my anchor in this storm, was still mine to hold onto like a lifeline. My parents' surprise at my arrival melted quickly into the kind of warmth I'd forgotten existed. Sitting there with Mom's perfectly brewed tea warming my hands, time seemed to slow down, letting peace seep into my bones. Dad's gentle voice broke through the comfort like a soft rain. Why all the luggage, sweetheart? Marriage is about endurance, you know. His words hit me like echoes from another life. I'd been enduring all right. 2 years of emotional drought with my mother-in-law, Savannah, and Kyle. Watching Kyle morph from a loving husband to a financial parasite had been like watching a flower wilt in reverse. Finally, like a dam breaking, I let the whole story flood out. My parents sat there absorbing every word, their nods like silent hugs. Mom's voice was soft as silk when she said, "Oh, Stephanie, you've carried this burden long enough. You don't owe them another minute." Dad leaned forward, his eyes full of concern. "Maybe it's time to think about divorce papers. Kyle seemed different when you married him, but money has a way of revealing who people really are." Their genuine concern washed over me like a warm wave, unleashing tears I didn't know I'd been holding back. "Was it really that bad, honey?" Dad's question was as gentle as a whisper. Through tears that felt more like relief than sadness, I managed to respond, "I'd forgotten what real understanding feels like. It's been so long." After gathering myself, I added with a hint of mystery, "The divorce papers can wait, Dad. I have a feeling there's one more act in this play." That intuition was like a compass pointing true north. 3 months passed like scenes in a movie of my own making. I'd moved from my parents' loving shelter into my own apartment. My personal sanctuary. The power to control my own money felt like flying after years of being caged. I hired a housekeeper without a second thought and reclaimed my time like a lost treasure. Life became a series of small victories. Travel I'd postponed, purchases I'd denied myself, moments that belonged to me alone. Each morning reminded me what my hard-earned money was truly worth. Looking back at those 2 years felt like watching a stranger's life in black and white. The manipulation was clear now, they'd been gaslighting me like pros in a long con. Then, exactly 3 months after my unceremonious eviction, my phone's ring shattered the peace I'd built. The phone's persistent ringing pierced my peaceful sanctuary like an unwelcome ghost from the past. I let the first call fade into silence, then the second. Each ring feeling like fingers scratching at a wound I'd just begun to heal. By the third call, something in its urgency sent chills down my spine, like a premonition I couldn't ignore. Finally, on the fourth ring, my hand moved of its own accord, as if pulled by invisible strings of curiosity and dread. The voice that greeted me was hauntingly familiar. My mother-in-law, the woman who had perfected the art of looking through me for 2 years, now speaking with careful desperation. She'd been hunting for me, she revealed, like a desperate prospector searching for gold. My parents' house, my workplace, everywhere I might be found. I held my tongue, letting the silence stretch between us like a taut wire. Her pleas tumbled out like autumn leaves. They needed me, their social life had withered, and their foolish assumption of survival without my income had crumbled to dust. A smile played across my lips, feeling more like a grimace than an expression of joy. Her voice cracked with desperation as she painted their dire situation. Utilities on the brink of disconnection, their lives unraveling like a poorly knitted sweater. The audacity of it all struck me like a slap. No apology for the past, no acknowledgement of their cruelty, just raw, naked need. They truly believed I would come running back like a faithful dog to its neglectful masters. Her frustration mounted at my silence, demanding to know if I had become heartless to their suffering. I ended the call as quietly as falling snow. The next day brought Savannah's voice, sharp as broken glass. She wielded guilt like a weapon, calling me immature for ignoring their distress, her self-righteousness burning my ears. After 2 years of treating me like a ghost, she dared to play the role of moral authority. I let her words evaporate into the void, each one as meaningless as smoke in the wind. Her tale of woe spilled forth like a rehearsed play. The looming utility shutoffs, the specter of heatstroke without air conditioning, each word dripping with calculated desperation. She questioned my humanity as if she had any right, warning that once the phone died, their last lifeline to me would snap. Her self-centered logic hit me like waves breaking against a stone wall. Persistent but ultimately powerless. Then came the crown jewel of her delusion, dismissing their cruel eviction as just a joke, as if throwing someone's life onto the lawn was mere playful banter. The word of joke hung in the air like poison, mocking the memory of my belongings scattered like fallen leaves. I severed the connection again, cutting her off mid-manipulation. Then came Kyle's call, like the final act in this theater of desperation. His approach was softer, lined with apologies that felt like too little rain after years of drought. He painted a picture of their crumbling world, a house of cards finally collapsing under the weight of its own deceit. His attempt at contrition might have moved mountains 3 months ago, but now it barely stirred a pebble in my heart. Where had his voice been during those 90 days of silence? In those first raw days, his words might have been a lifeline I'd grasp. But 3 months had transformed me like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. Free, transformed, unbound. My new life sparkled with possibility, and each day, I gave myself a gift. The thought of return felt like volunteering for imprisonment. I acknowledged his apology with the politeness of a stranger, then delivered my truth like a swift blade. I knew about his infidelity, confirmed by professionals who had tracked his betrayals like breadcrumbs. I thanked him with Arctic courtesy for treating me like his family's personal bank for 2 years. The divorce papers, I informed him, would be arriving like autumn leaves. Inevitable and numerous. I could almost hear him turning to stone on the other end of the line. When he still dared to plea for my return, I named my impossible price, $20,000. Every penny I'd poured into their bottomless well of need. The amount hung between us like an impassable wall, exactly as I intended. His silence and abrupt disconnect told me the truth had finally pierced his armor of denial. The divorce papers flew like arrows to their target, accompanied by demands for emotional compensation. His swift surrender and payment surprised me. Fear of his exposed affairs at work must have loosened his purse strings. Later, whispers reached me of their house on the market. A desperate grab for cash in a tightening noose of consequences. Their future looked like a narrow path through thorny undergrowth. Renting with their tarnished credit, scraping by on what they'd once considered pocket change. They had planted seeds of cruelty and were now harvesting a bitter crop. But their fate had become as distant to me as stars in the morning sky. I've embraced my solitude like a long-lost friend. Marriage has become a closed chapter in my book of life. Now, I pour my energy into my own growth, my work, my freedom. Each day a celebration of independence. Life, I've learned, is too precious to waste on those who treat your heart like a doormat.